from Sam's Tours Palau. This is 30 years is this year in October. Sam Scott, our founder, started the company back in 1990. He is an American dude who's been in Palau actually 30, I think it's 35 years right now. I don't want to date him. Awesome dude. If you come out to Sam's, he hangs around. He's around all the time. And just the whole crew, myself, Dermot, Sam, everybody, love to see you. Come on out when you can. So anyway, let's see here. So where is Palau? Let's talk a little bit about that. Palau is this little tiny arrow right here pointed, and as you can see that kind of triangular motion, that is the Coral Triangle, okay? And we sit about 400 nautical miles to the east of the Coral Triangle, and what that means in terms of diving is more about the biodiversity. So the Coral Triangle is thought to be the most biodiverse underwater part of the planet. About 2,000 or so species of fish are thought to be in that triangle. Palau itself has about 1,500. So you can kind of see, just as that 400 nautical miles goes, we drop off a little bit, but we still have a lot of fish. Consider that to the Caribbean. The whole of the Caribbean has 500 species of fish, okay? And so we sit on the Kyushu mountain ridge. And this is a really interesting part. So everybody's heard of the Marianas Trench. Everybody's heard of maybe the Yap Trench or even the Palau Trench. But all of those deep water trenches ride along that mountain ridge. That whole ridge is underwater for the most part, with rare exception. Palau being one spot. I think Guam is actually, they're a little bit inland from it, but it's part of that ridge. It's just in off of that one. But Palau is the only place down in the southern part of it that is visible. And so what that lends for is it brings in all of that, it brings in all of the upwater welling. And this is really, really important because it's what feeds the system. It's why we have so many fish. It's why we have so many sharks. It's why we have all of the rich, nutrient-rich waters that we do. They're not just being pushed in, they're kind of upwelling up from the depths. When you think about that, the Palau Trench is almost as deep as the Marianas Trench. You could put Everest in it, and there would still be about over a mile to go to the surface. And it was thought to be formed about 65, 70 million years ago, and extends all the way from Japan down to Indonesia, which is quite remarkable when you think about it. A little bit of the geography and geology of the place. It's kind of a mix. It's kind of one of those rare things. You have volcanic rock and raised limestone. The very famous pictures of Palau, the Mushroom Cloud Islands, are all raised limestone, which have those unique trees that grow onto them, and they look really, really cool. There's over 400 islands. It just depends on, it's high or low tide, if you will. Something as big as your coffee table, they will consider an island if it's above water. If you squished all the landmass together, you'd have about 460 kilometers or so, square kilometers of landmass. And within that, believe it or not, there's 16 states. They modeled the system after the US. In some ways it's good, and in other ways it creates some issues, just no differently than it does in the state, in the US when we try to do certain types of federal things, it become issue, but mostly it's along clan lines. There's approximately 21,000 full-time residents in Palau, and last year we had roughly a little over 105,000 visitors. So we basically have a 5-to-1 visitor to the actual person living there. You can tell the time of day by the cars on the road. So the big thing about Palau is the barrier reef, and this is what you guys all come to love. Why it's rated probably the best wall diving in the world. The whole eastern side of the island is this wall, if you will, that slopes kind of out from to about 600-700 feet, sometimes over 1,000 feet in areas. We have 264 square kilometers of barrier reef. So the whole part, if you look at this thing, the inner part of this lagoon here can be as flat as a swimming pool. That area actually encompasses 521 square miles, okay? On the eastern side, you have those deep trenches, which is where all that upwelling comes from. So you have a crazy amount of area, a lot of diving area to cover. So today we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to go into depth a little bit from what we talked about the other day, which was, we kind of went more into the spawning aggregations and what made those things all really cool and fun to see. And today I'm going to talk to you about some things that get on some different notes. And so we talked in the last presentation about legacy, and we're going to continue on with that thought for this first part especially. All of you need to consider what legacy you're leaving behind to your kids, your grandkids, nieces and nephews, friends' kids, younger people in general. And it was something that we take very seriously in Palau. Palau was the world's first shark sanctuary. And what does that actually mean? We pressed for many years in Palau for Palau to declare all of its waters a shark sanctuary. And what we meant by that, so in 2009, President Johnson Triviong, on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly, declared to the world that all of Palau's EEZ would be a sanctuary for sharks, meaning you couldn't hunt, fish, have any hooks, have anything shark related on your vessel or selling or anything like that. Palauans never hunted sharks anyway. This was always foreign people coming in and out. That area encompassed about 233,000 square miles, and it was it was the first country in the world that ever declared its entire EEZ a shark sanctuary. It was at the time the largest shark sanctuary and one of the world's largest marine protected areas in the world. We expanded that even further in 2015 to say for the Marine Protection Act to mean all of our EEZ, and it was all marine life, not just sharks. It was everything. Fishing, we got rid of long line fishing. We got rid of anything to do any on shark fishing, whale, anything. It didn't really matter. You couldn't do it. One of the reasons that this was near to us is that we started to see the impacts to the dive sites and for what people were coming to see. Palau's always been known to have a lot of sharks. And, there's an estimated 180 million sharks killed every year for their fins. There was a study done back in 2012 that talked about the economic value of a shark and the community benefits to the diving community and just tourism in general in Palau. And alive, the sharks are worth about, it's about 418 million. It's about $18 million a shark through the course of their life, if you will. And so this accounts for about 8% of the gross domestic product of Palau when you really, really think about it. I mean, it became evident that keeping these sharks alive longer became beneficial to the survival and the well-being of Palau and Palauans. And so they are often caught as bycatch, not just simply for their fins, but they're just being taken out too big. And just a quick little side note on the shark sanctuary at the time, just to give you an idea how big that area was, it's about the size of France. That was the area of our shark sanctuary. So, this is what people come to expect when they come out onto our reefs, to see lots of sharks. And why do we protect them? I mean, that's a big thing. Like, everybody talks about it all the time. There's people will give you a variety of reasons. In Palau and likewise in other areas around the world, the biggest reason is they keep the food chain in check. One of the things that is extremely important to remember is that the sharks feed on a lot of various species, sick, weak, some of the fish that eat reef fish. And they found through research and stuff, for example, if you take sharks that would feed on, for example, snappers, things like that, if the sharks start to decline and the population of reef predatory fish increase, what happens is they either take away the animals that eat and take algae off the reef, and therefore it kind of trickles down. So what you can end up finding, they found in areas where shark populations have declined, is those animals are now feeding on all the fish that keep the reefs clean. And what they've seen is algae and other degradation of the reef because of that, because the shark population has gone down, because the reef fish that they would eat are feeding on too many fish. So it's just one thing to keep in mind. Sharks may hold a lot of cure for diseases, cancers, things of that nature. They they have puzzled researchers for years as to why they don't get sick. Their tissues appear to have anticoagulant properties and antibacterial properties, and they're studying to find in the light of the COVID-19 scare, there are medical conditions that they're looking for, not for this particular one, but viruses, cystic fibrosis, cancer, things of those nature that they could hold the key to many of these things. They boost local economies, as I just mentioned. There was a study done in 2013 for global shark tourism, and I want to make sure I get the numbers right here. The shark tourism business, if you will, it generates about $300 million a year to have live sharks, and expected to double in the next 20 years. Shark diving in Australia, for example, is roughly $17.7 million annually, and it creates more than 10,000 jobs in 29 countries. They're worth much more than that one single price that somebody would get for a fin. The one that a lot of people don't know is that they actually help our carbon cycle. They keep our carbon cycle in motion. And what do I mean by that? Obviously, everybody knows carbon's a critical element in our lives. And it's a big contributor to climate change. We hear that all the time with that. And so what generally happens is you have feeding of dead, so basically big animals die, they create carbon, sharks either eat them, the big animal, they sink to the floor, the scavengers eat those fish. It basically keeps it in balance. Research has found that when large marine animals such as whales, and sharks sequester comparatively large amounts of carbon, when they die naturally, they sink, right? And so they get fed on and scavenged on by the creatures at the bottom. However, when they're removed, it disrupts the ocean's carbon cycle, meaning that it's out of balance again, and thus creating problems for us. And the last part, the reason we want to protect them is because they're just freaking cool, man. Like, for those of you who have not had the opportunity to shark dive yet, I encourage you to get out and see the beauty of these animals. They are just magnificent. And even after all these years of being in this industry and all the many shows and all the many being involved with big creatures most of my life, it's just every day I get in, I just feel honored to be in the water with them, and I'm just moved by how beautiful they really, really are. So let's talk about, are the protections working in terms of what we have in Palau? Like, is the shark sanctuary working? The short answer to that would be yes. At least initially, we think it is. Look, it's about 10 years on since we declared that. And while enforcement remains difficult, because obviously in smaller countries you have you lack the ability to patrol waters. We're now doing aerial drone stuff where we can actually target the fishing boats and get their numbers and stuff. So even though we can't send the boats out all the time because that costs so much, they're flying drones from Australia to patrol our waters. But interestingly enough, if you think about a gray reef shark and the time that from their birth to when they would end up on the outer reef, it falls in line with about that 10-year mark. And so this past couple years, we have begun to notice that we're seeing higher and higher numbers of juvenile reef sharks on the reef where we go diving. One would take off of that we're seeing. Hopefully, we're seeing these protections. The pressure on them has kind of diminished, so that they're able to grow a little bit and they're able to do better. This is a picture right here taken by Jesse Alpert, who's our in-house, a wonderful in-house photographer and videographer, man. You can see his website down there as well if you want to check out some of Jesse's images. He's just brilliant, man. These are juvenile reef sharks. We used to have where you'd see kind of a small number of them. Now you're seeing 30, 40, 50 of them in a school, and they kind of huddle close together because obviously there's bigger stuff out there. So they'll kind of cruise around like you see here. Again, much smaller, maybe 2 to 3 feet long. They're cute, on many levels, but they just kind of hang in one little area away from the big boys. They don't mess with anything, but they've moved out. And this is what we're trying to keep in Palau. This is, there are 100 pictures, 100 sharks in this frame. These are all gray reefs. We get lots of sharks in Palau. Gray reefs, black tips, white tips are the most prevalent. But we also have oceanic black tips. We also have bull sharks, tiger sharks. We do see the occasional hammerheads, silver tips. We do get whale sharks from time to time. And, you know, every now and then you'll see something come out of the deep that you didn't expect to see. But those are the ones you generally see the most. This is a silver tip right here at depth, looking up with a cleaner wrasse right on the tip of its nose. So again, I'm going to ask you, you know, you guys will hear me probably almost every time I get to talk or I speak, and I'm with Cheryl, whatever, you will hear me ask this question. And it's just something that I hope we all can keep in mind at least one moment out of the day, which is, what legacy are we leaving behind? And the question you need to ask is, what legacy are you leaving for them? We have a choice as adults every single day to just do something that leaves something better for these kids, so that they get to see this underwater world the way that I grew up in it, the way that you guys are seeing it now, but it's fastly diminishing due to plastic use, single-use plastics, people throwing away, not recycling, just not getting smarter about our choices. So every day when you do something, especially with the oceans, it has to be with these guys in mind. We get to see what we see today, but what we're trying to do is leave it for these guys. Have you ever wanted to be an astronaut? What do you think? It's an interesting question. You ever wonder what it'd be like to be in space? I have. This is probably one of the things that maybe not at the top of the list, but certainly on that list as to why I got into diving, was because I really wanted to, it kind of reminded me of floating, you know, in space, which you used to see in all the movies. You can kind of accomplish close to the same thing by doing Blackwater diving, or diving what we call the inner space with Blackwater diving. Imagine open ocean drift diving at night. It is done around the world in various facets. There's people who do it off the beach. They do it with the mantas in Kona. We actually do it in about clicks, depends on the day, but it can be upwards of 8 clicks off the East Coast in that deep trench at night, open ocean, if the conditions are right. And it is absolutely amazing what you can find. These are all just various little images. Most of these things are as small as the fingernail, your small fingernail. Very, very tiny, microscopic. But did you know that the greatest migration on Earth is actually rarely seen by humans? Of course, we all know about the wildebeest, and we know about other big migrations and things like that. But every night, billions of creatures come from the depths of the ocean to, they believe, up to about 2 kilometers from the surface over the course of the evening, and then gradually drop back down to the depths as the sunlight rises. It is the greatest journey. They make it each night, and it is the largest migration on Earth. And that's what we're trying to capture with Blackwater diving at Sam's Tours. This was designed, I don't want to say founded by, but we kind of developed the product through Richard Barndon and Paul Collins, who kind of oversee the unique dive expeditions for us, which is the spawning dives and all of that. These two guys are absolutely brilliant at what they do. They have pretty much nailed all of these things. And both of Richard is one of the top underwater photographers in the world, and Paul is an amazing underwater videographer who does stuff for BBC. If you've seen Life on Night on Earth, which is a new Netflix series, there's the deep seas part with the bump heads. Paul shot that with those guys for Netflix, and these guys they're just amazing stuff. So a lot of this stuff is all stuff that they've developed in Palau, and you can come do it with the very best. These guys they're fantastic. How it's done. So basically what we do is we go out, obviously, we deploy light bars at about 33 feet, about 12 meters, 33, 34 feet, and it's on a bar, and they're high watt bulbs that basically point down, if you will. And we let those kind of marinate, if you will, for a little while. That light attracts those critters up from the depths. And then we basically suit up and we get in the water. Now that can be, it can be either tethered, depending on the level of the person, or it can sometimes be a free swim if the conditions are proper. And the dives generally last about 60 to 90 minutes. And anybody who tells you the very first time you Blackwater dive that it isn't scary to step off the back of a boat into pitch black water in the middle of the ocean, yeah, it's awesome when you get caught up in the creatures, but that initial thought is quite amazing. It is incredibly good for photographers. I mean, it is really designed for macro guys. It's not a wide angle. Obviously, you're trying to shoot really, really tiny macro stuff. Stuff like this cauliflower jelly, which Jesse Alpert again shot. You can see the lights in the background there. This is another type of jelly. We believe it's a Panade dyed jelly or something like that, but you can see this kind of stuff again, very, very small with the inner workings of this thing. A juvenile Moorish idol. Whoops, sorry guys, I hit the wrong thing here. A juvenile Moorish idol, and just so much more to see. I mean, there's just, we see everything from, we've even gotten paper nautilus. Richard Barton got a paper nautilus one night there, which is one of the rarest creatures that's been photographed. So we see a lot. It's not for the faint of heart, and you do have to have some skill. And again, if you're not a photographer, it's not necessarily something I would necessarily get into for what we're doing. The mantas are a bit different. They're big. For us, you shoot macro stuff. But definitely worth coming out and seeing it. The last thing that Cheryl wanted me to talk a little bit more about today was Jellyfish Lake. Obviously, for those of you who have been to Palau, you know about Jellyfish Lake. For those of you who have not been to Palau, Jellyfish Lake is a very, very famous lake in Palau and worldwide. This is the lake right here. It is an inland marine water lake. You can see from this aerial shot, there's some people in the lake right there. And you can see, if you look right on what would be as you're looking at the screen, the left-hand side, there's kind of this golden little thing in the water. Those are actually the jellyfish, okay? So there are actually 5 jellyfish lakes in Palau, with the golden mastigious jellyfishes in there. The subspecies of all these jellyfish in Palau are actually named after Palau's first 5 presidents. And to protect the delicate nature of each of these lakes, we only allow tourists into one of them, okay? And that is the one that you'll hear talked about, that was affected by the El Nino a couple of years back. It's been hit twice now, once in 1998, and then once again in a couple of years, 2016. And we actually lost the jellyfish for the first, in 98, it was about a year and 6 months. This time it increased. We were lucky we didn't get the coral bleaching that, for example, the barrier reef got, but it did increase the water temperature in the lake by a few degrees. Without the rain, the salinity built and all the adult jellyfish dropped off or got killed off. So the polyps, which remained on the bottom in a hibernative state for over 2 years, and then would release as do these little test release, and they'd send kind of a few wayward souls out to see if it was good enough, all clear. And if it didn't go good, they would just wait again. And so it started back again. I guess it's been a little over a year now. And now it's back up to where we were at before. You can see in this picture at the top here, that's how big of an area those jellyfish are in. It's large. It's a lot of jellyfish. The lake itself is about 14 acres in size, and the average depth of the lake is about 30 meters or about 100 feet. And what's interesting about this lake is that it's believed to be about 12,000 years old based on the depth, okay? There's about 50 to 70 inland marine lakes in Palau, 5 of which have those jellyfish. There are ones that have other jellyfish in them that have not lost the ability to sting. The jellyfish in Jellyfish Lake have evolved. They do technically still sting a bit, but you would only feel it on like the inside of your mouth, or if you have really ultra sensitive areas. But by and large, the human can't really feel it on that. But it is connected with the oceans as well through tunnels, right? So there's fissures and tunnels that come in and out, which is how they believe it. And so it rises and falls every day with the tides. One other interesting part about the lake too is that we talked about it being 100 feet or 30 meters. The first 45 feet are what you see here with the jellyfish. The last, then there's kind of this like red this red layer that goes in there, and this red layer is a stratified. It has no oxygen in it, and below that there's no life down to 100 feet. So we don't dive the lake. It's only snorkel only. The lake that we go into will contain two types of jellyfish. The one is the gold jellyfish, which you guys see here in the picture. And the other one's a moon jelly. Most of you guys have seen in the big white bulbous moon things. And there's about 6 to 8 million jellyfish in that lake right now. And so what we do is we basically pull up. The Core State has built a really nice dock area down there. It is a little bit of a hike to get up and into the lake. It's not, they've made it a lot easier than it was 20, 25 years ago, when you actually had to climb up the side of a limestone mountain hill, because you have to climb up and over. They've now put like ropes in there and things like that where you can get it. It isn't unphysical though, so you would consider that if you do come to Palau, it is something to consider. We offer Jellyfish Lake in all of our packages that Cheryl and Terry Christie and all of them sell through Deep Blue. So if you get packages through them, or you get the diving stuff, that's all normally that's part of what we do, because it's something everybody, when you come to Palau, you definitely want to see Jellyfish Lake. So that's all I got today.